Brilliant. I was on a train back in, I think, February, in the good old days of being able to get on a train into London. It's been that long since I've been into London, which just seems extraordinary. But I was reading this amazing book. I'd really recommend it, anybody who's into Wilberforce. It's called Amazing Grace by Eric Metaxas. And I was reading this book on the train up, and it came across this chapter that talked about the role of Newton, Wilberforce. Wilberforce was facing such hardship in trying to get this abolition of slavery bill through Parliament. And he was asking big questions about whether he had what it takes to continue his role as a Christian in Parliament when everything was in opposition. And he went to a church in Hoxton, near Hoxton Square in Shoreditch in London, and met with John Newton. And John Newton just brilliantly said these words, both to him in person and in a following letter. He said, "You are not only a representative for Yorkshire, you have the far greater honour of being a representative of the Lord, in a place where many know him not, and an opportunity of showing him what are the genuine fruits of that faith which you are known to profess." And the result of that wisdom, those small words in a random church in Hoxton Square in North London, persuaded Wilberforce not to leave Parliament, but to continue on his work towards the abolition of slavery. And in February 1807, the House of Commons voted to end the practice of trading in human beings. And the members of the House rose in unison to salute William Wilberforce. Britain becomes one of the first countries in Europe to abolish the slave trade, and the spin-offs of that go around the world. And so I decided that I would go to that church after my meeting, which happened to be around the corner to Hoxton Square in Shoreditch. And I sat in that church just reflecting on the significance of these few moments between two people. The significance of the small, the significance of the things that come together that then create the big picture. If it had not been for John Newton, what would have happened to William Wilberforce? Over the past few weeks, we've been exploring the kingdom of God, and Neil has been on great form just unpacking that. And today, Matthew 13, 31 to 32, he told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches." Jesus is talking to a crowd on a beach, and the crowd gets intense, so Jesus stands on a boat. I don't know whether that's in the water, but I sense actually maybe it's an elevated position on the beach, speaking downwind, so we can a load of people can hear. But Jesus, you read the whole of Matthew 13, and Jesus is just on a roll. There seems to be this relentless communication of the kingdom of God is like, the kingdom of God is like. These illustrations, these stories that are disrupting and challenging and inspiring, and more people are coming in because this is the communication of a different kind of system, a different kind of empire, a different kind of kingdom, which was so inspiring to hear. I sense that Jesus had almost been building up to this moment as a result of living within a different kind of system that had been overseen by Augustus Caesar in Rome. A culture and a system and a kingdom and an empire that was very egocentric and very oppressed in its nature. As we heard a few weeks back, the kingdom of God is God's active reign in the world. It is the flow of divine love and compassion. It is the divine flow of grace and mercy and equality and justice and inclusion and healing, forgiveness, restoration, peace, power, wisdom, creativity, solutions, ideas and life in all its fullness. This is the kingdom of God that Jesus models and speaks about. And what we live in today, this is the kingdom that we promote and celebrate. And this kingdom of God that Jesus speaks about starts within the smallest seed that you put on the top of your finger and you can hardly see. The kingdom of God miraculously starts within the smallest seed that when planted grows to be one of the largest plants, where other ecosystems come in, including birds, and gain shelter and shade. The kingdom of God is always active. It's growing in ways that are almost out of control. You can fit probably about 15,000 mustard seeds in your hand that all have the potential to grow. So I think our role in it is to relinquish control. The kingdom of love and justice is everywhere and often in the least likely of places. You know, when the world feels as if it is falling apart, God is always at work. There are mustard seeds everywhere. World systems in economics and business are changing through countless individuals coming together as a movement to reimagine what economics and business looks like, with people and planet at the heart of the vision. You look at B Corps, you look at stuff it, I've forgotten the name of it. You look at, don't laugh that much, honestly. You can hear all that laughing. There are so many movements that are happening. Imperative 21, that's what I was trying to think of. Have a look into that, Imperative 21. Extraordinary movements of change makers who are coming together to reimagine economics and business that then influences politics. The really exciting thing is, the more you read into the Gospels, Jesus radically communicates the kingdom of God in so many ways through the way that he invests his time in small things and in individuals. I love the fact that Jesus escapes the buzz and the thousands and gets on a boat with the disciples to the other side of the lake and casts out a demon to one person. One person. There's thousands on the other side of the lake, and yet he invests time and energy and focus in casting out, in setting one person free on the other side of the lake. Then he has to come back again. That's 3 days. How much could he have done with the thousands? But time and time again, if you look at the story of the woman of Samaria around the well, and just the investment of time and focus, Jesus concentrating on the small things, what we would potentially describe as insignificant. Jesus gives significance to the small things and says, this is the kingdom of God. It's mustard seeds that then grows to become something extraordinary. If Jesus was teaching today in the streets around Tonbridge, he would maybe talk about a kingdom of God being like a girl called Greta in Sweden, who every Friday on her own sat outside the local council offices to demand action concerning climate change. This one act grows into a group of people sitting outside the council offices, and then through media and social media grows to be a global movement of children and young people coming together to demand change for climate change. leading into governments around the world declaring climate emergency, starting with one teenage girl, Greta. The kingdom of God is like a teenager called Zalasht who escapes Afghanistan at the age of 12, takes 4 years to get to London with her family, and as a result of her experience, she decides to train to become a child psychologist. And we, as TBC, had the privilege of supporting her in the early days. And today, from this mustard seed, this desire to become a child psychologist, she is today in Greece providing post-traumatic support to thousands of children in the refugee camps around Greece. And we as TBC have had the privilege of aligning with and supporting this mustard seed and allowing it to develop and grow in ways which are extraordinary. She was one of the first people to be chosen on Obama's fellowship program, which happened last year. The kingdom of God is like a church called TBC, who in 1985 comes alongside a young visionary called Steve Chalk and provides the foundations of belief and support and encouragement, which then leads to an organisation called Oasis Trust. 4 years after creating that, rooted in this belief and support and encouragement, I myself meet Steve and take a year out in a year out team called Frontline. And that's where I met Rachel. This is the start of a whole new journey that enabled me to work with Oasis in London, that then led into me setting another charity. And all that is rooted in a group of people coming around one person in 1984, 1985, and saying, we believe in you. Here's a bit of seed money. Here's a bit of time voluntarily. Here's a bit of encouragement. Come on, Steve, keep going. And as a result of that, millions of people around the world are impacted. Today, there are countless schools as part of the academy. There's expressions of life going on around the world. And it's all rooted in a mustard seed that started in the offices around here. This is the kingdom of God. Another frontliner called Phil Lane, who is one of the people who we would love to support, who's one of our mission partners in Belgium. I had the privilege of spending a day with Phil and with Tim Mungy, and we spent the whole afternoon in this squat in one of the most challenging estates in Brussels. And we sat with this extraordinary couple who shared their story. And just around us was next to nothing. And they just was trying to provide us with food. And we were like, please, no. And they were just desperate to be hospitable, wanting to be generous. And then we had to make a quick escape because there was word of a fire in the basement. So we quickly escaped this squat in Brussels. And sure enough, fire brigade, the whole basement was set alight. And in the basement were all their papers, all the things that were their personal belongings. And there is Phil, who in the small, and what we would describe potentially as an insignificant, with his director title that so could have just been on the periphery. There he is, right at the heart of this situation, providing support and love, both in terms of personal support, but also then practical. And it was amazing just to see Phil Lane working his magic in the grassroots, in the small of that estate. This week, you will receive a link to an amazing a story of a guy called Scott Harrison, who I've had the privilege to track with over the past year. And again, just that most miraculous story of something starting in brokenness and in the small, And then he set up a water charity as a result of being a photojournalist in Africa. And over the last 15 years has set up Charity Water, which has provided water and hydration and wells to over 15 million people, raising over $400 million. His story is going to be in your inbox this week, just again as an incredible example of the way God uses the mustard seed and brings incredible life and vitality. On Friday in the food bank, we have food tables that are outside, and again, as already been said by Kev, we have the privilege of just engaging with and talking with people. And on Friday, an amazing woman was just picking up some bread and we were just by ourselves, and just started to ask if she was okay. And she just started sharing the hardship, the difficulties that she was working through in the context of her marriage and the challenges of family in lockdown. And it was just 10 minutes of listening. I didn't say a word. There was maybe a few leading questions, but I hardly said a word. And she said at the end of that, that was such a time I needed, just to be able to talk. And I came in, and Marks and Spencer's just sometimes gives us boxes of biscuits that we're able to kind of give out. And I just said, there you go, hang on in there. We're with you. We are here for you. And the tears just coming down her face. The significance of the small, the significance of the small, that enables the potential for things to grow in extraordinary ways. Encouragement, words of wisdom, listening well, practical help, financial assistance, being under the radar, no headlines. This is the culture of the kingdom which Jesus spoke about and modeled. And we all get to play. And the growth has nothing to do with us. That's a really important part. The growth is something that is supernatural and something that just happens. We started our hour together with a man in India who over 40 years planted over 50,000 trees, providing incredible new ecosystem that didn't happen before. This is random. But I just worked out if each one of us as TBC family just committed to 2 or 3 acts of kindness, of encouragement, of listening well, like the guy planting 2 or 3 trees a day that becomes a whole forest. If we at TBC over the next 5 years committed to 2 to 3 acts of kindness, of encouragement, of words of life, over the next 5 years, that would amount to 1.6 million acts of kindness. Over 5 years, over 10 years, 3.2 million expressions of small mustard seed acts, words of intent, listening well. Imagine that within the context of our children's work and our young people's work and our work with the seniors. Imagine that as in our community engagement, in our home groups, in our social groups, in our places of work, in our places of leisure. This is our calling. And again, the growth has nothing to do with us. It's not in our hands. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed that starts small and grows in ways we will never ever comprehend. And we all get to play.